I'm Doug MacKenzie.
And I'm John Ward.
And we're the co-hosts of the ABCs of IBC podcast.
Come join us as we share our unique perspective on the infinite banking concept as the creator, Nelson Nash, intended. We're back.
How's it going, John?
Well, I finally got this computer up and got my cell phone to be a hotspot, as you know, and so we're in business.
Yeah, John did some pretty high-tech maneuvering on this one.
Yeah, for an old guy, I did all right. Thanks, Doug. Well, you know, I'll tell everybody that pretty much since Doug and I have started, I haven't told this story, have I, Doug? That you've been pretty much saying from day one, hey, you having trouble with your computer again? And you ought to get a new computer. And you would send me links to, hey, it's a pretty good one for a pretty good price,
Yeah,
but I'm like, maybe I just need to get started earlier. And if I start earlier, I can wait 20 minutes to get my computer to work better. But finally, right, we had one more too many times of that. And then I tried to do this call on my phone. And then I said, well, let me get my laptop out, the new laptop. Because Doug had said, oh, you're going to get this laptop. You're going to be amazed at how fast this thing is. Well, I'll tell you, this would have taken a half an hour. It would have taken up the whole half an hour, probably going to do with the show. And then Doug couldn't have done it because he's going to move on to other things. And so, yeah. Thanks for listening to that story, but we're ready to go, and this is amazing, and I do thank you publicly.
That was my good deed for February, getting you into a new laptop.
Yeah, well, there you go. But we've talked about being patient with your prospects, and I can tell you that Doug was incredibly patient with me. Because I've pretty much been going, sorry. And, it's okay. And so thank you for that, too, because, yeah, I'm sure you were probably frustrated with me. Like, just get a laptop, will you, please? So here we are.
Here we are.
So
I'm actually pretty excited to talk about this one today. I think it's going to be just kind of a fun little diversion from what we usually talk about in a way.
Yeah, I agree. So Doug and I were talking a little bit earlier, what are we talking about today? And I know it's not in the book, Becoming Your Own Banker, but it is a quote from Nelson, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember it exactly, but he's on the internet and places where you probably could get a hold of the clip, or I could post it sometime. He got into the insurance business because, he was in the forestry consulting business. He was a pilot, he did a few other things, but he had a brother. Not sure if he was, they were pretty close in age, but I don't remember if he was older or younger. But his brother was selling life insurance, and he sold Nelson some life insurance, and then
some whole life insurance, correct?
Yeah, it was whole life. Yep. Just maybe not structured exactly the way that we do these now and the way that he trained everyone to do. But he basically decided, thereafter he got into the life insurance business. He had clients, and he obviously put policies either on himself or on other family members. He certainly did all of that, but I just don't know the order of all of it. And he would say something along this line: when I see my brother in heaven, I'm going to say, hey, why didn't you sell me more of this? Right? Mm-hmm. So you want to take it from there a little bit, or you want me to keep rattling on here?
Well, I mean, I think it speaks to the notion that any of our listeners that are practicing this, once you start doing it, it's hard not to have this kind of nagging thought of, man, why didn't I start doing this sooner? Right.
Well, yeah, for sure. And it's interesting. So I I kind of look at it from this vantage point, right? It's kind of the trouble that Nelson got himself into. When I say trouble, it was, he had congestive heart failure. I think he was 53. He says he got all replumbed, like maybe 4 or 5 arteries, like massive clogging of the arteries. And at the same time, roughly, it was like they call it the perfect storm, but it's like the worst storm ever, the nightmare storm. They did, replumb him and save his life. And then he also had his first, I think it was his first grandchild, a granddaughter, who was diagnosed with cancer as a newborn.
Yeah, and they talk about that in the book.
Yeah, right. He does. Yeah, he gets into all these pieces, right? And he talks about the fact that he was in business with an attorney where they probably were in the forestry land business, and they shared resources to acquire stuff. And probably around the time that the interest rates skyrocketed, right? He was paying like 9.5, and these loans were rolling over every 90 days, these commercial loans. And all of a sudden, 1 quarter of the year, it spiked to 21.5, I think.
Yes.
And who knows what leveraging this attorney was doing, maybe beyond whatever he was doing with Nelson. But this attorney claimed bankruptcy, right? So, in essence, because his name was on the loans too, and the other guy's, he's thinking, I'm not claiming bankruptcy, but how am I going to pay back this $500,000 back in the 80s, right? Early part of the 80s, in at 21.5%. I mean, that'd be tough to do today. For anybody that was thinking, I'm paying, 9.5, which is not that low comparative to what the rates are right now, but still a lot lower than 21.5. I mean, it's not just double the prices, right? I mean, double the payment cost, even though the rate looks like it's roughly double. No, this is like exponential growth in what you're all of a sudden going to owe every month. Otherwise, they take what, because it's a secured loan by this property. And so he's got all these things going on, and he's in the chapel at the hospital, and he's down on his knees praying, or he's in a wheelchair. I don't know but he's in the chapel and he's talking to God. And he says that God, spoke back to him, like many people say happens. And he said, hey, you know the answer. You've got these policies, policy or policies, and you can, start to borrow, start to pay it off, right? But he claims it took him 13 years to get out from under ever needing a bank again. So this goes all the way back, Doug, right, to this idea that when he sees his brother in heaven, he's going to say, why didn't you sell me more of this whole life that would have had more cash value, right? If I had plugged more of my money in there, I would have had a safety net that would have gotten me out from under this, which was, I'm sure, pretty stressful. Probably not.
Yes.
Yeah. Not really great for a guy with a heart condition, right?
No, and I mean the beauty of that is that his whole life insurance policies did get him out from under that, but he could have gotten out from that a lot more quickly, right? Had he bought more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I feel like these things always happen. People always discover things through adversity. So it took
Yes.
him, having this, I mean, almost kind of financial ending experience. I mean, that was probably going to end with him declaring bankruptcy as well and being set back quite a bit in his life. And it switched to him obviously doing what he did until he died.
Right. Another
Writing about
35.
and promoting the infinite banking concept and, freeing ourselves from the banking system. And he ended his life, I would say, a pretty wealthy individual.
And certainly a man that was felt like he had delivered some value. You know, it wasn't about him, but he knew that he came and did God's work, really, right? I'm sure that's the way he looked at it. And I've mentioned, in the film that's called This Is Nelson Nash, which you can at the very least find um, on YouTube, no cost, right? And there's a point where he's talking to his son-in-law. I think he's talking to his son-in-law, David Stearns, who's the chairman of the board at the Nelson Nash Institute. And he said, my grandkids will and great grandkids, and they're never going to see the inside of a bank. They'll never need a bank again, right? Because
Yep.
we already have the banking system within our family with multiple policies, and we've been utilizing them for decades.
Exactly.
And they're going to continue, and they're definitely going to have a legacy, a generational thing here, that'll only become a more fruitful financial thing for the family, which of course then there's all the benefits, the experiences, the things you can do that you might not be able to do if you didn't have the means. But I think he felt this amazing. It appeared on the movie, the documentary, that he was totally at peace. And this was like roughly 4 months before he passed. And he was like, "Yeah, my my house is in order," as they say, right? And I think that was, like you said earlier, the adversity. Well, adversity definitely gets our attention. It's like, oh, okay, I got to pay attention here because now I got stuff to really work through. And yeah, it would have been nice. But on a lighter note, um, I can say that one of my clients, it's actually a family that's all clients, uh, and it was probably 6 months after uh, the husband and wife each put a policy on themselves that the husband came back to me and said, "Hey, can I put any more money in here?" And that's not the last time that's happened. And when I've had to say, well, not in this policy or your wife's policy, but let me reach out, talk to the underwriter, one of the underwriters of the insurance company, and see if there's any more room. Um, and so, they put I think he put another 25% on himself and almost doubled the amount. Actually, no, it was, yeah, well, a doubling of what was put on his wife the first time. So, yeah, they ended up, being in the six figures of annual premiums, and it's been, as he claims, a lifesaver. It's really saved his business, especially through COVID. And so, I don't ever want to sound like a salesman, right? But of course, because I technically am, I'm sure, people have to try to, feel through that and say, is this guy trying to get me to put more premiums in? Because I'm guessing the bigger the premiums, the more money he's going to make. And well, the truth is that yes, that is true, but that's not the reason. I'm doing it because you can, and because, well, while your health is good enough to get a policy, and you think you can potentially stretch yourself, because I know people's income, I know what their assets are. I'm not saying that I'm telling them what to do, but I'm showing them that you could get approved for this amount. And you may find once you're doing the use of this policy as your banking system, you'll be thinking, wow, now I'm really starting to get it because I'm in action with the policy. And then, okay, yeah, I wish I had more in there because I saw how easy it was to get the loan. Then I realized, yeah, I just pay it back, but nobody's sending me a booklet, or I'm not getting any emails, or I don't have to worry about, I mean, I'm going to make the payments, but I don't have to really worry. Nobody's telling me what to do. I've got this pool of capital now.
And
So
your
they do.
principal is still compounding. I think that's the beauty of it there too, is like, hey, I got this, my pool of capital is still just doing this thing as if I didn't have the loans out, which is so important. And in Nelson's example, that's a good case. This is me having, a child, another one on the way, a family, things to care for. I have things that I want to protect, and having some sort of emergency fund, if you want to call it, something like in Nelson's scenario where I have capital to get myself out of a jam if I happen to have, it could be, the thing is, you never see those things coming when they come, right? So it's hard to plan for kind of like a catastrophic financial event, but they happen to people all the time. And instead of just, throwing money into a savings account that I can't really do much with, this allows me to build up substantial death benefit protection to cover my family in case something happens to me, and also building up a really substantial pool of capital, and knowing that I have like plenty of coverage if something happens. And again, I'm like you, John. I wish I had more. I wish I had started this when I was like 18.
Sorry about that. I meant to shut that off. Sorry. Yeah, I wish I had more, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but we all start where we start, but it's important to understand that the time that you have, or anybody has, to implement this is limited, right? I mean, it is limited based on our health, our age, and it's not something that can necessarily be done infinitely forever, right? So it's important to take advantage of this if you think that this is something you might want to do. And our experience is that once people start doing this and they see the peace of mind that it gives them, the ability to leverage, financial opportunities, they want to really have as much as possible.
Yeah, it's all those things, right? We we cover this ground so fast, but right, just to kind of backtrack and re-emphasize, because you made great points, which is, yeah, it's not just about, adversity and emergencies and surprises, and yeah, you have things you want to do, I mean, you want to experience, and that could be, taking your family, you know, I don't know, on a trip for a month, and that's going to cost some money. And if you have this place where you can go and leverage what you have, but never take your money, let your money continue to grow, and you are going to maybe spend it anyways, right? If you were going to take the trip, and where were you going to get the money from? Well, you were going to use a credit card, potentially, to book everything, and then, and it might be come straight from your bank account, so your debit card in essence. uh, so with a with a credit card, well, you got to pay it back, and you're going to pay it back with either cash flow or savings that you have, right? But you had to book because you needed the card, and you're doing it all online. Then you're not going to send them Federal Reserve notes in the mail. But but you will, with a debit card, you've taken the money straight out of your account, right? And you've given it to somebody else, and it's not ever going to be, that money's never going to be in your account again. But if you take it from your policy's cash value, then you borrow from the insurance company, and now you do have an outstanding bill, so to speak. And yeah, when you pay it back to the insurance company, you basically leverage the same amount of dollars and more again. So yeah, it's not about just emergencies. It's not about, hey, I got myself into hot water here and I need to get out quick before I get burned. And yeah, so
But I think that's important to look at it from that frame sometimes, because the way that infinite banking is often talked about is, I mean, it's in the name, right? It's like, we're going to use this to leverage and make money and rinse, repeat. And it's all about, furthering financial situations. But the reality is that it also does, and I think this aspect is often overlooked, similarly, to the death benefit, this aspect of having peace of mind, of having the ability to cover ourselves in the face of financial adversity is really important, really important. And I thought people don't realize how important it is until they need it.
Right, exactly. And so, yeah, no better time than now, and that's why you would say, hey, can you even potentially see that you could stretch, or you could rearrange some of the where you're putting money, right? Like, because you see the value in this long term. um hey, you think you can only put 5, 10, 20 in, but you might be able to put in roughly twice that amount. You have the cash flow. It's not all committed, right? Or if you could redirect some of it from some other commitment, so to speak, that you have. And just food for thought, right? Like, I don't know, I don't say, hey, whatever you decide you're going to be comfortable with, right? But I want you to at least maybe sit with it a little bit, think it through. People are reading continually while you're talking with them, as their potential agent. And so maybe picking up more and more, letting it sink in, making it, seem more palatable, like this isn't crazy man's work, like jumping into this different way of doing financial management. And so, I do try to say that, but I try to say it somewhat gently so that people don't feel like, yeah, I hardly know you, John, and you're already trying to get me to put in like twice as much or think about twice as much. And I'm only doing it from experience with other people that have become clients, and from my own personal experience, right? Like, oh, I wanted to say, Doug, because I'm rambling again here, is the first policy I put on myself was 20,000, and I didn't know what I didn't know, and I wasn't really working with the right people. They weren't actually IBC practitioners, authorized IBC practitioners, though they were kind of doing a little bit of a niche thing that was very similar. And I could have set up the policy to probably put like 35 in at the time. And, what was it? 2 years ago. So 2 years ago was 2022. So 3 years later, I'm not even 2.5 years later, right? I'm putting another policy on, bigger, which is fine. but I could have already had room to put another 15K or so in, right?
And you
And
got lucky
I
in a
got tapped
sense.
out. I got tapped out but I could have got approved for
Well,
the third time.
thankfully you qualified for another policy.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because yeah, any number of things could have happened, right? And yeah, then I would have been. And if I'm not qualifying, that's not a good sign about my longevity, right? And then I feel
Yeah.
like darn, I didn't get enough insurance either. Not only am I not going to do more of this infinite banking, but I have 3 kids that I like to leave them something. Maybe they won't need it. I don't know. But I would have wanted to have more insurance too. And so I would have been stopped out if my health had gone sideways. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like, that's why it's important to talk to somebody who's really spent time with this, doing it themselves, right? And really know the nuances of it all. We're not the only ones that might know how to do this.
No, not at all.
But we do probably feel like in most things that you do, if you're really passionate about it, you think you're at least as good as the best. I don't know if that's really true or not, but certainly very passionate about it, and also very patient, where I'll take all kinds of input from even prospects, right? And the questions that people, you're always learning something and seeing things maybe, again, from somebody else's vantage point. And so, yeah, you get better hopefully all the time by doing this too. And then want to pass that along to anybody that wants to help. Clients
It's
and
kind of like the
prospects.
natural progression is literally the same thing that Nelson wanted to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, it's pretty, yeah, I hope that was fun. That's a fun topic, of him saying that, like, yeah, I'm gonna give him a piece of my mind. Like, why didn't you tell me to
Yeah.
put more? You
First
would
thing,
have.
before he
Yeah,
gives him a
yeah.
hug.
Oh, and by the way, it's good to see you again. Yeah. But yeah, like, don't get stuck in that place, right? Understand, like when he bought life insurance from his brother, even his brother didn't. His brother hadn't come up with the infinite banking concept. It wasn't until his brother was gone, right, that he discovered, oh, look at what you can do with this policy. You can become your own banker, So,
Amen.
amen. All right. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thanks for another good idea. And I'm impressed that you were able to set up with a hotspot on your computer. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know. Okay, boomer. Yeah, yeah, look at me. I did sell software my whole life, but I always tell people, they go, oh, especially years ago, if you did this 20 years ago, 25 years ago, like I did, people will say, oh, are you an engineer? Are you technical? I'm being like, no, I know how to sell the software, but I'm not technical. But I guess I got just enough technical skills to get this thing fired up, and I do listen. So thanks for sticking with the patience, and finally get me to buy a new laptop, because I got
Hey, anytime.
All right. Well, Doug, you have a great day, and I'll talk with you next week.
That sounds good. I look forward to it.
Same here. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, John.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the ABCs of IBC.
If you enjoyed listening, please hit subscribe and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen. It really helps. See you next week.
Bye.